She mocked my career at her office. I ended the engagement. I always believed that respect was the foundation of love. Without it, what's the point? It wasn't just about romantic gestures or shared dreams. It was about valuing each other's passions, no matter how different they were. That's why, when the woman I planned to marry mocked my career in front of her colleagues, it felt like a slap I'd never recover from. And that's when I knew I couldn't marry someone who didn't respect me. But maybe I should have seen it coming. We met 5 years ago, in the most unexpected way. She was a rising star in corporate law, always dressed sharp, her confidence shining through every conversation. I was a chef, passionate about creating meals that weren't just food but experiences. I believed every plate told a story, every flavor held a memory. She said that was what drew her to me, my passion, my dedication. For a while, it felt like we were unstoppable. She'd visit my small restaurant after long shifts, and I'd surprise her with dishes inspired by our late-night talks. She said my food made her feel alive, like every bite reminded her of simpler, better times. I believed her. I believed in us. But things started to change when she made partner at her firm. The hours grew longer, the conversations shorter. She'd come home exhausted, and I understood. But slowly, her tone shifted. My stories about the restaurant didn't excite her anymore. If I shared an idea for a new dish, she'd offer a distracted nod. When I talked about expanding the menu, she'd ask, "Will that even make a difference in your profits?" First, I thought it was stress talking. She was under pressure, and maybe my small world of flavors seemed insignificant compared to her corporate battles. So I let it go. I made excuses. Until the night of her firm's annual dinner. It was a big night, one she'd been planning for weeks. She bought a new dress, spent hours prepping for conversations with the higher-ups. And she wanted me there. "To show you off," she'd said. I didn't mind. I was proud of her, proud of us. I thought we were still a team. I wore my best suit. Not designer, but sharp enough. She looked stunning, and I told her so. She smiled, kissed me lightly, and whispered, "Just try to mingle, okay? And maybe don't talk too much about food. Not everyone gets it." It stung a little, but I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just nerves. The dinner started fine. I shook hands, smiled, answered polite questions about my restaurant. Some people were genuinely interested, asking about local ingredients, farm partnerships, and I found myself enjoying it. Until I overheard her. She stood with a group of her colleagues, laughing. The kind of laughter that's just a little too sharp, too eager. One of them asked about me, about my work. And she said it. "Oh, he's a chef." She laughed lightly, twirling the stem of her wine glass. "You know, just playing in the kitchen all day. But hey, it keeps him busy." They laughed. All of them, including her. I stood there, frozen. The words hit harder than I could have imagined. Playing in the kitchen? That was how she saw me? After years of hard work, after building a restaurant from nothing, after chasing down suppliers, perfecting recipes, pouring my heart into every plate, I was just playing. I wanted to believe I misunderstood, that maybe it was a bad joke. So I approached, smiling tightly. She looked at me like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't standing there. Feeling like my chest had been cracked open, I waited until we were alone, until the laughter faded, and the fake smiles dropped. "Playing in the kitchen?" I asked quietly. She blinked, confused at first, then waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, that. Come on, it was just a joke. Small talk. A joke that made me sound like a child," I said. "Like my career doesn't matter." She sighed. "Don't be so sensitive. They don't care about culinary stuff. It's not exactly big league work. Big league work. Like hers. Like the towering skyscrapers and corporate deals." I didn't say anything more. There was nothing left to say. Later that night, in the car, the silence was thick. She tried to act like nothing happened, but I wasn't playing that game anymore. "You really think that, don't you?" I asked, my voice low. "That what I do doesn't matter?" She didn't answer right away, just stared out the window. Finally, she said, "It matters to you, and that's fine. Fine." And right there I knew. She didn't respect me. Not my work. Not my passion. Not the life I'd built with my own hands. I stared out at the road ahead, wondering how long I'd been lying to myself. How many moments I'd brushed off as stress, or jokes, or bad timing, when really it was something much worse. Disrespect. And if she couldn't respect me, how could I marry her? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the engagement ring I'd picked with so much hope, thinking about every moment, every conversation, every quiet put-down I'd let slide. And I realized I was done. Not because I didn't love her, but because I finally loved myself enough to walk away. The next morning, I packed a bag. And when she woke up, her hair messy, her voice still sleepy, I looked her in the eyes and said the words that ended it all. "I can't do this anymore." She stared, confused. "What are you talking about?" "This," I said, gesturing between us. "Us. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me." For a moment, I saw the walls go up. The defense. The denial. "I respect you," she said quickly. "I love you." "No," I replied calmly. "You love the idea of me, but you don't respect what I do, who I am." And with that, I left. No screaming. No begging. Just silence. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Leaving wasn't easy. You don't walk away from years of love and shared memories without feeling the sting. But staying would have been worse, like slowly drowning under the weight of someone else's expectations. I spent that first night in a cheap motel room staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Wondering if I should have stayed and fought harder. But then I thought about her words. That laugh, the dismissive tone. And I knew. I hadn't left a woman who loved me. I'd left a woman who saw me as less. The next morning, I returned home while she was at work. The house felt cold, unfamiliar. I walked through each room, seeing the life we'd built together, but it was like looking at shadows. I packed a few things, essentials. Clothes. My knives. The recipe book I'd been adding to for years. Everything else could stay. I didn't need it. Not anymore. Before leaving, I stood in the kitchen, running my hand over the worn wooden counter where I'd spent hours experimenting with flavors and dishes. The place where I'd believed she'd loved not just me, but my passion. It hurt, knowing it had all been a lie. I moved into a small apartment above my restaurant. It wasn't much, just a bed, a kitchen, and a view of the back alley, but it was mine. It felt honest. Real. The restaurant had always been my safe haven, but now it became my refuge. I poured every ounce of myself into the place, staying late into the night, testing new recipes, speaking with local farmers, and redesigning the menu. Work kept my mind busy, but the nights were hard. It's one thing to walk away. It's another to accept that the person you loved never truly saw your worth. The calls started within days. First, it was the "what happened" messages. Then the apologies. Then the anger. "You're overreacting," she said in one voicemail. It was just a joke. You can't throw away everything over one stupid moment. But it wasn't one moment. It was years of little cuts, small dismissals that I'd convinced myself were nothing. Until they became everything. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She wanted to pull me back in to smooth it over, but I wasn't going to be that man again. The man who let himself be belittled for the sake of keeping the peace. Word spread quickly. Our friends reached out, some offering support, others questioning my decision. "She loves you," they said. It was just stress. But they hadn't been there. They hadn't heard her laughter. They hadn't seen the look in her eyes when she dismissed my life's work as a hobby. And deep down, I think they knew. They just didn't want to admit it. Despite the chaos, the restaurant began to thrive. Maybe it was the focus, or maybe it was the sheer stubbornness of proving her wrong. Proving myself right. I revamped the space, added new dishes to the menu, hosted local farm-to-table nights. Customers responded. Word spread. Reviews came in, praising the depth of flavor, the creativity. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, and then came the offer that changed everything. One afternoon, as I was finalizing a new seasonal menu, a man walked in. Clean suit, firm handshake. He introduced himself as a representative from a local investors group. They wanted to back a new restaurant concept, one that celebrated local cuisine, sustainable practices, and authentic experiences. "We've heard about your work," he said. "You've got something special here. Something the city needs more of." The offer was simple but life-changing. Funding. Resources. A chance to expand, to take my vision beyond these four walls. I should have felt nothing but excitement. But all I could think was how she would have reacted. How she would have questioned the numbers, the practicality, the bottom line. How she would have smiled that patronizing smile and asked if it was really worth the risk. And that's when I knew if she were still in my life, I wouldn't even consider it. I'd already be convincing myself to let the opportunity go, to play it safe, to not dream too big, but she wasn't in my life anymore. And I wasn't that man anymore. I'm in, I told him. Let's build something incredible. From that moment, the pace was relentless. Meetings, tastings, location scouting. I worked harder than I ever had in my life, fueled by something deeper than ambition. It was about proving that my passion wasn't a weakness. It was my strength. And every decision I made was rooted in that belief. It wasn't long before I saw her again. It was inevitable. We shared a city, mutual friends. It happened at a casual gathering, a friend's birthday party. I walked in feeling more confident than I had in months, and there she was. Talking, laughing, her usual group huddled around her. When our eyes met, something shifted. Her smile faltered. She approached me later, drink in hand, that same guarded expression on her face. You look good, she said, her voice hesitant. Thanks, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. There was a pause. The kind that stretches just a little too long. I heard about the new restaurant, she added, eyes searching mine. Congratulations. That's impressive. I gave a small nod. It's been a lot of work. She hesitated, then said quietly, I'm sorry. For what I said. For how I made you feel. For a moment, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered every quiet dismissal, every moment I doubted my worth because of her words. I'm not angry, I said. But I'm not the same person I was. I can see that, she admitted, glancing down at her glass. I didn't realize what I was doing. I thought I was being realistic. You were being cruel, I said, not harsh, just honest. You didn't believe in me. And that's not something I can forget. She looked up, and for the first time I saw regret in her eyes. Real regret. But it was too late. I hope it works out, she said finally, before turning away, and that was it. No grand confrontation. No heated words. Just an ending that felt final and right. That night, I went back to my restaurant, standing in the space that I had built with my own hands, my own passion. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a symbol of who I was. Of what I could accomplish when I stopped letting other people define my worth. And I knew, without a doubt, that I'd made the right choice. The weeks that followed were a blur of hard work and relentless focus. The new restaurant project consumed every waking hour. I met with designers, local farmers, and artisans who would help bring the vision to life. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about creating an experience, a space where people could connect with the land, with flavors that told stories of local roots and sustainable practices. Every decision mattered, from the reclaimed wood used in the tables to the herbs grown in the courtyard garden. This place was going to be more than a restaurant. It was going to be a statement. But even as the excitement of the project grew, the echoes of my past lingered. It wasn't easy to shake the memories, the doubt she had planted. Sometimes, late at night when the world grew quiet, I'd catch myself wondering, would she be impressed now? Would she see the value in what I was building? Would she regret her words? But then I'd remember the weight of her laughter, the sharpness of her dismissive smile, and the answer came clear. It didn't matter. It wasn't about her anymore. This was about me, and about proving something to myself that I should have never questioned in the first place. And just as I felt like I was gaining momentum, life threw an unexpected curve. Came in the form of a letter from the city council. The property adjacent to my restaurant, the one I'd hoped to expand into for outdoor dining, was under consideration for a new luxury high-rise. A development project that would cast shadows over the entire block, including my restaurant's garden space. The irony was almost laughable. Here I was working to create something rooted in sustainability and community, and just next door, they wanted to erect a monument to status and wealth. Worse, I discovered the law firm representing the developers was the same one where she worked. The same one where she had built her career by defending projects just like this. I knew I'd see her again. And I did. The public hearing was held at City Hall, a formal gathering of developers, council members, and concerned citizens. I stood in the back, arms crossed, listening as the developers presented their vision. A towering glass structure with luxury apartments, promising economic growth and modernization. They spoke of profits, of boosting the local economy, but they didn't mention how their shadow would kill the garden space, how it would drain the sunlight from the very soil I planned to use for my herbs and vegetables, And then she stood, representing the developers with her usual grace and composure. She spoke confidently, professionally, advocating for the project as if it were the most beneficial move for the city's future. Her arguments were polished, her tone calm, but her words felt like a blade twisting in my side. She was defending the destruction of something I hadn't even finished building yet. When it was my turn, I stepped forward. My palms were damp, but my voice was steady. "My name is Daniel," I said, introducing myself. "I own the farm-to-table restaurant adjacent to the proposed development site. What we're building is more than a dining experience. It's a celebration of sustainable living, local agriculture, and community connection. We source everything from nearby farms. We work with local artisans, and we're creating a space where people can experience food that tells a story. This project isn't just about business. It's about nurturing the very heart of this neighborhood." I paused, looking around the room. Most faces were blank, but a few nodded, thoughtful. "The proposed high-rise will cast significant shadows over the property. The gardens we've cultivated will suffer. The produce we rely on, the experience we're crafting, will be compromised. We're not just talking about a loss of sunlight, we're talking about a loss of identity, of purpose. If we allow this development, we're not investing in the future, we're erasing it." There was silence when I finished, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, thoughtful, and as I stepped back, I caught her gaze. Her face gave nothing away, but her eyes lingered longer than they should have. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was regret, or maybe it was nothing at all. After the hearing, she approached me outside. She looked tired, a little less put together than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her differently now. "You spoke well," she said, her voice cautious. "I spoke the truth," I replied. She nodded slowly. "It's complicated. It's not personal. It's just business." I let out a bitter laugh. "That's always your answer, isn't it? Just business." She sighed. "I didn't know it was your project. I only found out recently. And that makes it better?" I asked, my voice low. "Does it change the fact that you're standing in courtrooms defending people who are tearing apart everything I believe in?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Finally, she said, "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "And it wasn't just once. It was every time you laughed at my passion. Every time you made me feel like my work didn't matter." She swallowed hard, but said nothing. "I'm not the same man you left behind," I continued, "and I don't think you ever really understood who I was. But I know who I am now. I know what I'm building, and I'm going to fight for it." Her eyes flickered. "You really care about this place, don't you?" I nodded. "It's more than a restaurant. It's my life's work. It's something real, something that matters. And I won't let anyone take it away, not even you." There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, the words still hanging between us like smoke. The fight wasn't over. I spent the next weeks gathering support, rallying the community, filing reports and impact statements. I worked with environmental groups, spoke with city planners, and held meetings with neighbors. Every day was a battle, but it wasn't just about protecting the restaurant anymore. It was about protecting my right to dream, to build something meaningful, something lasting. And with every step, I felt stronger, like I was reclaiming not just my business, but my voice, my value. The final hearing came and I stood firm. I presented my case, laid out the ecological impacts, the community concerns, the loss that would ripple if this high-rise went forward. And when the council announced that the proposal was being rejected, that the community's needs were being prioritized, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not just because I'd saved my project, but because I'd stood up for myself, for my work, for everything I believed in. Later that night, as I stood in my restaurant's empty dining room, I looked around at what I'd built. The space wasn't perfect yet. It still needed polishing, details to be finalized. But it was mine, and it was safe. I didn't think about her anymore. Not really, because this fight had been about more than proving her wrong. It had been about proving myself right. The weeks after the final hearing felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. The shadow of the high-rise development was gone, and with it, the lingering weight of doubt and insecurity. For the first time in a long while, I felt free to create, to build, to dream without the fear of someone belittling my work or questioning my worth. I threw myself into the restaurant, refining every detail, making sure that every corner of the space reflected the vision I had carried in my mind for years. The walls were adorned with artwork from local artists, the menus printed on recycled paper, the tables crafted from reclaimed wood. Every element had meaning, a story, a purpose. It wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a testament to resilience, to passion, to standing firm even when the world tried to shake you. The grand opening was set for late autumn. I wanted it to coincide with the harvest season, to celebrate the local farmers and producers who had supported me every step of the way. The days leading up to it were chaotic but exhilarating. Deliveries came in waves, final touches were added, and I worked side by side with my team to ensure that every detail was perfect. These were people who believed in me, who had seen me at my lowest and stood by me as I fought to rebuild. We weren't just co-workers, we were a family bound not by blood, but by shared struggle and unwavering support. The night of the opening arrived, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, the restaurant came alive. Soft lighting cast a warm glow over the space. The aroma of fresh herbs and roasted vegetables filled the air, and laughter echoed from every corner. Local farmers, community leaders, friends, and loyal customers gathered, sipping on locally sourced wines and tasting the carefully curated dishes that told stories of the region's rich, agricultural heritage. I stood near the entrance, welcoming each guest, shaking hands, thanking them for coming. It felt surreal, like standing in the middle of a dream I'd fought so hard to keep alive. The energy in the room was electric, buzzing with excitement and pride. This was more than just an opening. It was a celebration of perseverance. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She wore a simple dress, nothing like the sharp corporate attire I remembered. Her hair was looser, her face less guarded. For a moment, the noise of the room faded, and it was just the two of us, separated by more than just the physical space. She approached slowly, hesitantly, as if unsure whether she was welcome. "This is beautiful," she said softly, her eyes sweeping over the room. "You've built something incredible." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Thank you." There was an awkward pause, the kind that fills the air between two people with too much history and not enough closure. "I wanted to come," she said after a moment, "to see it for myself, and to say I'm sorry." I didn't respond, not immediately. I wasn't sure what there was to say. The apology was late. The regret came after the damage had already been done. "I didn't understand back then," she continued, "what this meant to you, how much it mattered. I thought I was being realistic, practical. But I was wrong. I was cruel. I didn't respect your work, and I didn't respect you. And I'm sorry." I studied her face, searching for sincerity, and I found it there. But it wasn't enough, not anymore. I had come too far, endured too much to let old wounds reopen. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "But this isn't about the past anymore. This is about moving forward." She nodded, a shadow of sadness passing through her eyes. "I know. I needed to say it." I could tell she wanted more. A conversation, maybe even forgiveness. But there were things that didn't need to be said. Some endings didn't need to be rehashed. "I wish you well," I said simply, and I meant it. She smiled softly, a bittersweet expression, then turned and slipped back into the crowd. Watching her go, I felt nothing. Not anger, not regret, just a quiet acceptance. Some people weren't meant to walk every road with you, and that was okay. The night carried on, and I let myself be swept back into the celebration. Toasts were made, stories were shared, laughter rang out. And in that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be at. It wasn't long after the opening that the restaurant began gaining attention beyond the local community. Reviews poured in, food critics praising the creativity of the dishes, the sustainability of the ingredients, the authenticity of the concept. People appreciated that every plate had a story, every meal rooted in connection and purpose. Bookings filled weeks in advance. The tables that once sat empty during my hardest days now buzzed with life every night. Felt like validation, not just of the food, but of the fight it had taken to get here. And with that success came new opportunities. Invitations to collaborate with local farms, to host community dinners and sustainable cooking workshops. I found myself in conversations I'd only dreamed of, discussing partnerships with organizations dedicated to ecological preservation and community food programs. Each conversation reminded me why I started, why I fought so hard to hold on to my vision. But it wasn't just the professional success that brought peace. It was the community I had built around me, the friendships that had deepened through struggle, the connections that had formed over shared meals and shared stories. I wasn't just serving food. I was creating a space where people could come together, where they could feel rooted and connected in a world that so often felt disconnected and cold. One evening, after the rush of dinner service had slowed, I sat on the back patio, the garden illuminated by soft string lights. The air was cool, the scent of rosemary and thyme lingering from the day's harvest. I watched as guests lingered over their meals, laughing and talking, their faces glowing in the gentle light, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time: contentment. This wasn't just about proving someone wrong anymore. It wasn't about old wounds or past betrayals. It was about creating something real, something lasting, something that mattered. Because in the end, it wasn't the loss that defined me. It wasn't the hurt or the disrespect. It was the choice to stand, to fight, to believe in myself when it felt like no one else did. It was the courage to walk away from what diminished me and the determination to build something that reflected who I truly was. And as I sat there, listening to the quiet hum of conversation and the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze, I knew that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.